Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Sarah. I don't know if you're new here, but welcome back. Today I'm a little bit more nervous making content. I don't know. I've had a couple of rough days being still very pregnant. You can see that. Yeah, I've been feeling this in my heart, and I really wanted to share some thoughts about this. So I have become aware for the last couple of weeks that about the show on Hulu that will be premiering next month, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And I was very, very shocked and a bit disgusted when I watched the trailer, because it was a very gross misrepresentation of our church, our beliefs, and our culture. And I wanted to get on here and say I am an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day-Saints, and I don't feel that they represent me or anyone else that I know that is a current and active member of the church. I don't know. I had to look up. I had to understand a lot of what was being. I had to look up stuff that was being said, like swinging. I didn't really know what that was. I had to, understand some of those terms. So apparently, it's got swinging and drinking and just a lot of things that go against our beliefs. And it was, I don't know if those women are actual members of the church, and it was hard for me to believe that they would be, because I don't know anyone that wants to do those things and also be a current member of the church. I just don't see why you would want to continue to be a member and also do those things, because you don't have to be a member of the church. And one of the girls says in the trailer that she loves the Mormon church, but there are so many rules we have to keep. And I find that so interesting, because there's nothing that says that you have to be a member, and if they weren't members, there wouldn't be any problem with their lifestyle. It's not. I don't really know how to express this, but it was so strange to me that they want to be members while also wanting to live this life. And the reason I feel this way is because I am a member, and I've been a member my whole life, and I've never felt that I had to do anything, really. Let me back up. When I was a child, I grew up in Brazil. I was born in Brazil, and that's where I grew up. And my family was a member for many years before I was even born. So when I was born, this is what we did. We went to church, and I was taught the gospel, and I was taught the principles and the Book of Mormon and the Bible and many church things ever since I was little. And a lot of what is talked about in that show is related to the culture here in Utah specifically. And I can speak for the culture of the church in Brazil, because that's where I grew up. And in that culture, because in Brazil the church isn't nearly as big as it is here in the United States, my family ended up serving in a lot of different callings, and they were well known by a lot of people because they were sort of pioneers in that region, and they became well known because, you know, it was a small church, and as it grew, they expanded, but they were part of it since the very beginning, if that makes sense. So because my grandpa was the stake president for about 10 years when I was a child, everyone knew me, and they knew who I was, and they knew my family, and I've always been used to people coming to me and, you know, talking to me like they knew me, and that was always very strange to me because obviously they didn't know me, and so there was sort of like a pressure to live up to the standards, and because people would be watching me, and, you know, whatever I did reverted and could reflect badly on my grandpa and everyone else in the family, if that makes sense. So, but this was when I was a child, and when I was 15, I moved to Utah with my mother, and when I got here, I was very, very, I was so happy that no one knew me and that I could just be myself. And it was the first time that I got to go to church and feel that I could make a mistake and that wouldn't be like a huge deal. And I don't want this to sound like, you know, the church was bad in Brazil, because there were so many wonderful members, and especially because there were a lot of converts, new people that had never known the church, and have felt that they finally found the thing that they were looking for and found their answers to their questions and to their prayers. So I don't mean to say that there's anything wrong with the gospel in the church in Brazil, but this is just my experience because of the social aspect of being a member of any sort of organization. And Brazil is also a very there's a lot of I don't want to get into this, but there's a lot of issues in the culture in Brazil in general, not just related to the church, that I disagree with. But this is a story for a different video. But when I got here, I was very happy that I could go to church, and I had... Sorry, my daughter needed something, and I went to take care of that. But anyway, I was so happy to come here, and I had... My mom and I were going through a really tough time. We didn't have much money for food, and it was a very rough time. But I had such wonderful church leaders that really, really took care of us and loved us, and, you know, did everything they could to help us. And I felt very, very loved, and they took care of me in a part of my life that was so difficult, and they were so important to me. So it makes me sad to see, you know, sometimes the media misrepresent the aspects of service within the church, and, you know, question people's intent and motives, when I've met wonderful, wonderful members here that have loved me and taken care of me in the most perfect ways. But what really upsets me about this misrepresentation is that I feel such joy in being a member of the church, and in being a wife and a mother, and having this be the most important thing in my life, having the gospel of Jesus Christ be the most important thing in my whole life. It brings me so much joy, and it holds me together in the worst days of my life. It has held me together in the worst days of my life, that it makes me really sad to see it misrepresented and presented in a way that, oh, this is such a burden. It's such a burden to keep the commandments. It's such a burden to be a wife who doesn't sleep with anyone else. Like this seems very, very strange to me, and very sad. And as much as I understand why they are making this show, it's good TV. It's gonna get attention, and it still made me feel sad. And I never met any of these women. I don't know if they're active or ever were members of the church, or I've never seen any of their content before. I didn't even know they existed. But this is not what the church is really like. I don't mean to say that there aren't issues, because with any organization in any sort of social situation, you're going to have, misunderstandings and issues, just like you have with anyone, like at school or at work or anywhere that you might go. This is just weird. We're all humans. But I can speak from my own experience in being in many different wards here in Utah. I'm 27 now, so I've been here for quite a while, and I quite love it here. I find that people here are so wonderful. There's so much trust, especially compared to my life in Brazil. There's so much more trust, more love, more care. We recently have had a lot of rains here in my area, and some people's basements were flooded, and we've been having a lot of those issues, and people are so quick to help each other. It's incredible, and you don't have to pay. People just come and offer it to you. I have wonderful neighbors, who come and ask us if we need anything. I really cannot complain. And in my personal ward, the ward that we go to every Sunday, we go to a Spanish ward, and that means that we only speak Spanish in our meetings there, and the people that are members are from lots of different Spanish speaking countries. So we do have a lot of different cultures in that ward mixed together. And I'm from Brazil, so I grew up speaking Portuguese and not Spanish. So it's a little bit of a challenge for me. My Spanish is not great, but I manage, and I currently serve as my husband and I are Sunday school teachers to the youth. I think our ages are between 15 and 17, which can be a little different from the English speaking wards, because we have a different, we may have a different age group. But anyway, I am able to serve, and people are so patient with me, and they love my accent, and they always welcome my contributions, and I feel really loved in this ward, and I feel really taken care of. And I've had issues in the past, and I've had really great leaders who have just taken care of me and loved me and got me to where I needed to be. So in my personal ward, I feel that people are generally, they expect the best of everyone. So even though we can misunderstand each other quite easily, because with Spanish you would think that everyone's speaking the same language, it's all the same, but actually, because there's so many different areas, there are words that people don't understand, and they can mean one thing here and another thing completely different over there. So it's really interesting, and no one ever expects that someone else means anything other than good, even if what they say might sound like it could be an insult or anything like that. I have never seen an instance like that, and I have not experienced that myself. And because my Spanish is pretty broken, I'm so glad that no one has ever misunderstood what I said. Like, people are so happy to see me, and they've never, I've never had a bad interaction with anyone. Not saying that every single ward is just like this, but I really love our ward, and I love our church, and I love our gospel, and it makes me really sad to see it misrepresented. The last thing that I wanted to mention was that one thing that I did find very strange in a culture, excuse me, one thing that I did find really strange in a culture here in Utah when I first moved here was actually the opposite of what these women were discussing. I grew up in a place where I rarely had friends who were members of the church, and the principles that we teach, for example, to dress modestly, or to not drink alcohol, do drugs, drink coffee, things like that, they were weird. They were different compared to all the other people that were around me. And there were many instances where I had many friends who weren't members of the church, and they've always were very respectful of my beliefs and the things that I was comfortable doing or not doing. But when I got here, I felt that, especially because I was a teenager, I felt that the people here were like my friends from outside of the church in this way. For example, they wouldn't care about dressing modestly. Like they didn't think that was a thing, or it was a strange concept for them to dress modestly. And that was so strange to me because I grew up, it was the opposite of what I expected. I expected that I would come here and it would be normal and everyone would understand that it's important to dress modestly. But it wasn't like that. I'm failing to explain this, but I felt that people here, at least in my high school, in my area, people in my age group weren't as committed to following the principles that I was taught growing up as the people that grew up with me in my ward, if that makes sense. So if anything, I find that the culture in Utah is a little bit more relaxed than what I grew up with in Brazil. For example, growing up, if in my ward with my other young women friends, whenever there were enough young women in my area, we always dressed modestly, and if we didn't, it was noticed. But here, I noticed that it wasn't a big deal if you didn't, and no one really cared about it, and it was sort of weird to make a deal of it. I don't know if this is making any sense, but this is to say that I think the culture here might be a little more relaxed. Of course, there could be other issues that I am not aware of. I've had the occasional issue, but nothing that would ever keep me from going to church. Because the reason I go to church is because God has told us to go to church, and He expects us to go there and renew our covenants with Him, and I want to do what God wants me to do. So regardless of what the culture would have been like, I would still do my best to be at church every Sunday and to do my best to serve other people in my ward, to be aware of their needs, and I hope that I'm doing a good enough job with that. So yeah, these were just a few thoughts on this. I know a lot of people have been talking about it. I hope my thoughts are just a little drop in the bucket of this. I don't really know what has driven me to speak about this. I would this wouldn't even be on my radar. I think I don't watch a lot of TV, so yeah. I hope that if you're not a member of the church, that you can go into reliable sources. You can go into the church's website, which I'll have linked down below, and there's a lot of information there that tells you exactly what we do and what we believe in. And there's know that if you watch this show, it's not accurate and it's not real, and it's a gross misrepresentation of us. Also, Mormon is a sort of misnomer. He was a prophet historian that compiled and sort of put together the Book of Mormon. That's why, the Book of Mormon is a core part of our religion. So that's why we sort of went by that misnomer for so long. But our current prophet has urged us to use the proper and complete name of the church, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, just exactly for that purpose, to not get any misrepresentation and to not be misunderstood, because our church is focused on Jesus Christ. And many people don't believe that we are even Christians, but I know Jesus Christ, and I believe he knows me, and I love him, and I will follow him anywhere. So yeah, these are just some of the thoughts I wanted to share. Forgive me for rambling, but yeah, so I'll see you next time.